I love giving handle demos because I think that there should be better handles in the world. I see too many bad handles and I get frustrated because if you don't feel comfortable putting a handle on your pot and you haven't really spent the time to investigate a good handle and develop a good handle, just don't add handles to your cups until you're ready. Develop this idea. I know Curt Hammerly has done a ton of development on his handles. He said that his mug shapes have changed like less than his handle shape. So his handle keeps evolving and changing. He did have a good handle to start with, but he's getting better at it.
No, I didn't. It started out terrible. You want to see?
I recommend doing the best you can, but don't just put a coil and just slap it on there because you're like, I don't know what to do with my handle. So make it, number one, look good. Number two, functional. It's gotta feel good in your hands. Okay, so I'm gonna show Curt's first iteration. So that's that same concept of just sticking a coil on there. He did have some angles that related to the mug. It feels nice in the hand and it relates. The second handle, what happened on his handle is it got larger. He realized that a larger cup needs a larger handle because you're using more of your hand to hold it. So it does visually look different and look better. And physically, you get to hold on to the handle with more of your hand to hold a larger cup. So a smaller handle, a smaller cup should be smaller. A larger cup should have a larger handle. And how do you get to that point? So here's my handle demo, and my encouragement for every one of you is that you put in the time to do this technique so that you can develop your handle for your cup or your pitcher. The cup that I have created is pretty large, my mug. And I want a handle that goes from the top all the way down to the bottom. There's different shapes. So you could do a C handle, which is like the letter C, or a 7. So a 7 is higher at the top, right? And then kind of slants back down towards the bottom. That's the handle that I've chosen, the 7 handle. And it should be in proportion to your cup. So this is the handle that I would add for this cup. So how did I get to this point? The thing that I started doing was I learned a technique on how to make a handle. The technique that I'm going to show you is just one technique. You could use any technique that you've learned. But I really like this one because it gives me a little bit more control of pinching and pulling. So what I'm going to look for now is gram on my scale. And what I've done here is I've started with 30 grams and I've worked all the way up to 80 grams in increments of 10. So I have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 grams. And I did the same handle technique on each of these up to this point so that I can now have a set of handles that I'm going to use and start to think about for the different sizes of my forms that I make. So a single finger handle is probably going to be around the 30 gram mark. A multi-finger handle is going to be more towards the 70 or 80 grams. And then anything in between will really be determined by the size of your cup or your mug that you're creating. So how did I get to this point? The first thing I did was I rolled out balls of clay that were 30 all the way to 80 grams. And then I'm going to do this one 80 grams. Made it into a ball of clay. And if you ever have trouble with rolling a ball of clay, I start by rolling it into a coil and then I fold it on itself. And then I fold it on itself. And then that way it starts to wedge the clay in your hand. So this is kind of like a hand wedging technique. And then squish it into a ball and it gets that clay moving. So now I have a sphere that I can now roll into a coil. So you can start by rolling it into your hand into a coil. And the idea here is that it is flat and even on both sides. And then you're going to use the fingers that you're going to grab the handle by, these 3 or 4 fingers. You're going to use that now to roll in the center. And I'm trying to keep my edges thick. So this side and this side should be thick. If they aren't thick, tap them onto the table to get the thickness that you want. And then once it's slightly longer than the 3 fingers that you would use to hold onto the handle, you're going to stop, flatten one side, flip it over, and flatten the other side. Now I'm going to get down low here, and I'm going to tilt this up, and then I'm going to make this shape, a diamond shape with 2 thumbs and 2 index fingers. And I'm going to gently push the clay together, starting at the bottom. The first push is going to be down, and that's really going to establish the fatter end of my handle. And this is known as the bone shape because obviously it looks like a bone at the beginning. So I'm going to establish one side, and then I'm going to gently pinch up.
If you could turn a little bit towards, sure.
So I get,
Nice.
yeah. Too much stuff on the table. All right. So I'm going to pinch down and then pinch upward. And this is like a really soft pinch. Don't like squeeze the clay because you'll end up with weird dents. And you want to try and make it as even as possible. And then we're going to flip this over. And I'm going to push down to establish the other side of the bone and pinch upward all the way to the top. There we go. And that's exactly how I made the first step. Now the second step is going to be pulling. And not in the traditional sense of pulling where you're like starting with a large chunk of clay and you're pulling the clay all the way through. I'm going to dip the handle in water and hold the top of the bone in one hand. And then my other hand, which will get wet, I'm going to run my thumb over all 4 of these quadrants and support it with the back of my fingers. And then I'm going to flip this over and do the same thing. So I'm running my thumb tip over all 4 of these quadrants to get rid of all those pinch marks. Now I want to make this longer and thinner. So I'm going to do that by using a pinching or a scissoring technique. So I'm going to scissor from the top down. And then I'm going to flip this over and then scissor from the top down again. The other hand motion that I'm going to do is what you probably would have already known about pulling handles is you're going to pinch around the sides and pull down. So when you wrap your fingers around a handle, that's the same position that you're going to do for pulling the sides. And notice that I'm doing the same motion, but I'm rotating the clay. So it's getting even pressure all around. So I'm going to rotate, even pressure. And then when do you stop? What I'm looking for is for this bone handle to be maybe 6 fingers wide. So my whole hand or all my 4 fingers can fit in this size handle. If I was doing a smaller handle, like the single finger one, I would do the same technique. It's a little bit smaller, right? It's like itty bitty. And then when I stop is when this is as long as like I can fit an extra finger on each side. So this one is probably 1 or 2 fingers, so I would have 4 fingers wide. And then for the single finger, look at that. Just run it over your single finger and then let it dry to leather hard off to the side. For the larger handle, this is a fun little thing. I'm going to hold my handle and then throw it downward. And what's happening is this top part here is wrapping around my index finger and it's taking on my whole hand shape. The exact shape that when I put my hand in there, it's going to hold. So I'm always using the hand position that I grab a handle by to create the handle itself. All right, that is step 100 of the 1,000 steps of this handle demo. I know there's a lot, but I really think that it takes time to develop these handles and do them well. So once I have a handle that is in the leather hard stage, that means I can pick it up like this and it doesn't flop over. And it's also the same dryness as my mug itself after I've trimmed it, right? I'm going to now attach that. But before you do that, I'm going to spend a little bit of time and pinch out the attachment.
Someone says, won't clay shrinkage make it too small for the fingers if you make it off of your finger?
It's always larger than my fingers though. So even my single finger, it is larger than my finger, right? It's wrapping around it. And when you attach it, there's going to be another step. So the question was, is it going to shrink smaller than what you can fit your finger in? You're going to attach your mug handle or your handle onto your cup or mug, and then you're going to expand it slightly larger than what you'll need. Slightly larger. All right, so that's establishing the top, and then this back is going to land flat against the mug. So what I'm going to do is just push that down in order to create my shape that will attach to my mug. All right, so how many grams for my pitcher? 80 to 90 is what I use for my pitcher shape. And for pitchers, I don't trim the bottom. So what I do is I do the rolling foot. Well, I wet trim, right? So that I trimmed a little bit. I roll the foot and I heated this one and it's starting to crack. So excuse the cracks on the bottom. Just compressing those cracks now with a little bit of water. So I roll the foot and then I do a push foot so that this is concave. And then we're going to use that same handle, the 80 or 90 grams, to attach to my pitcher. And you might think, well, that's not a large enough handle. If you're using that same handle for your mug, why are you using it for your pitcher? Well, you really don't need much size of a handle, larger size for a handle for a pitcher. That's all you need, because you're going to grab it here, it's going to tilt forward, and you're going to pour. If you have anything larger, it's going to be awkward to hold. So I'm going to show you how I attach it onto my pitcher so I can finish this one. I do have a curved surface that I'm attaching it to, so I'm going to curve my handle attachment. And then my good old trusty toothbrush and scraper tool for finishing up my attachments. So I use a toothbrush and this little serrated scraper to attach anything together. So slipping and scoring. So I'm going to use toothbrush and a little bit of water. And I'm creating slip on the surface of my clay. So I'm not using slip, I'm creating slip. You could just dip this in some vinegar and then use that. So there's vinegar and clay, creating vinegar clay slip. And then I do this on my handle first for a reason. I'll show you in a second. So I slip and then score. And when I score, I score in multiple directions. So now I have all these teeth. They're like slip teeth. And what I'm going to do is find where my spout is, and I'm going to go directly behind my spout. Place it on there. peel it off. What I've done is I transferred little slip bits there. And that is exactly where I'm going to slip and score on my pitcher or my mug. So I didn't have to draw any lines. I didn't have to measure. And I always score and slip larger than the surface that will attach to the handle. I can always clean that up later. Just want to make sure that I have a good attachment. All right, now I have two sides that are like Velcro, and when you stick them together and you apply pressure, those two sides will really cling together. So you have like these teeth, and when you stick them together, they're going to lock in. That's why I slip and score both sides. Double check by looking above to make sure that the handle is directly behind the spout. And then this is where all the extra hard work comes in. You want to blend that bone handle into the body of your pitcher or hand or your mug. And the toothbrush does a good job of helping you define that attachment or blending the attachment. Sponge away any extra mark. And sometimes I'll have to get a tool that is thin enough to fit inside that bottom attachment. And I'm going to use something that has like a kind of a sharper edge, and I'm pushing the clay into the body. I don't have to backfill or add any extra clay here because there's already enough clay on the handle itself. All right, toothbrush. Oh, I didn't get it behind my spout. Kind of off center. But guess what, guys? It's handmade. All right, the last thing I want to do is create the inside negative space so it feels nice in my hand as I pick it up. So I'm just bumping this up slightly where all the pressure and weight is going to rest on my index finger there, and make sure that my hand and my thumb feel comfortable as I grab my handle. And then again, make sure it's directly behind the spout. Mine, I think I got it a little off center, but it's still comfortable in my hand. And then the last thing I want to do is put my initials on it by stamping. And for pictures, I will put my stamp kind of close to where the handle is, or on the side, maybe down there. Last bit there. This does take some time, guys. You will be spending a lot of time on handles if you want to do them right. Production potters might tell you something different, but that is a whole different way of approaching handles. All right. There we go. So this is in the leather hard stage. I'm going to get rid of all my extra marks with a sponge.
So I'm going to ask, what is the benefit of using vinegar instead of water?
Oh, that's if you already use it to attach. Vinegar is a flocculant, so it flocks the molecules together. and some people say that it helps the connection, makes it stronger, but I'm not really a proponent of that. I just say use water and do all this extra work to make sure that you have a good connection, pressure against it. I don't think it needs the extra vinegar for attaching handles or attaching clay. All right, there is our pitcher. And what are we doing on time? How are we doing?
It is 12:09.
Wow, perfect. Okay.